Hello, my friends. Welcome to your new moon in Gemini reading. That's actually going to be talking about not just this new moon, but what's leading up to your full moon and then your waning moon, preparing you for the next new moon. So, this is a full lunar cycle reading that we're doing for you right now. And the next new moon is, I got my new moon calendar right here, June 29th. So, this is from now until June 29th. So, let's do this. By the way, the date is May 31st. If you're like, when is now? Whenever you're watching this video. So, what is this new moon bringing in for you? Newness. And then the full moon, what's really going to be like reaching its peak, what you're calling in, what you're ready to release, and then what you're going to be releasing during the waning moon and preparing for in the next new moon. So, right now with this new moon in Gemini, we have the Four of Cups. I'm using the Witchy Cat Tarot by Dame Darcy, and I just love it. We have the Four of Swords. And we have the Two of Swords. So what does that mean? So the Four of Cups shows up when you're feeling rather like ho-hum, kind of blah, you're not feeling fulfilled, you might be feeling lethargic or like things are lacking meaning. I know this might sound like, what? It's not really a bad place to be. It's normal in life sometimes to be like, what else? Where am I not feeling fulfilled? So this is really an invitation to check in on like what truly fulfills you, but to be mindful of where you're placing your focus. Like, obviously, if there are things that are not going well in your life, you acknowledge them. You don't just pretend they're not there, but then not to let those suck all your energy. So like, okay, there's challenges, or I'm not really feeling hot about this, or this isn't that great. You're allowed to just rest and think about it totally. But the answer isn't going to come by just being like upset. You know what I mean? So like be upset and honor your feelings, but then it's always with this card is like, look up. What other options are out there that are beyond what's immediately in front of you? So kind of like, I would also say the Four of Cups, and especially with that Four of Swords, is meditating or tapping into your connection with spirit, or whatever your practice says in terms of like connecting to your higher self. But doing that because like the material world just might not be like where you're going to find your answers right now. So like meditation and rest for clarity to come through. And the Four of Swords really echoes that, because the Four of Swords is a card of just like, it's just rest and recuperation. In the tarot, the Four of Swords follows the Three of Swords, which is the card of sorrow and sadness and heartbreak and grief. So it's this period where you just have to let yourself rest. So another thing with the Four of Swords is also very much an association with meditation, with reflection, journaling. It's just that like you're just taking a hot minute. I'd say with these two things, you need some rest and reflection right now. So if you're feeling pressured to be like, oh, new moon, new me, or whatever, or like, oh, it's summer, I should be doing all these things, but you just don't feel like you have the juice, you do need to fill your cup right now. The big question probably is, what fills my cup when this card comes up with that Four of Cups? You might not know what fills your cup, or the things that used to fill your cup may no longer fill your cup. And again, in order to discover the next few steps of the path, I think sometimes we get like, what's my thing, or like kind of the answer. This doesn't feel like to be about an thing or an answer. This actually just feels more like refilling, a little bit of clarity, and then the next few steps. So you can release any kind of like pressure on yourself. And you also got that Two of Swords. So look at the martini glasses and the meow meows. Just love this deck. So the Two of Swords shows up when we're feeling indecisive. And part of the reason you're feeling indecisive is not actually tapping into what you feel to be right. So it's a little bit too much relying on logic. And by the way, obviously logic has a place, but in this card, the indecision comes from not honoring your own feelings by putting other people's opinions before your own, like not trusting your inner wisdom. The Two of Swords, all twos are associated a little bit with the High Priestess, because that's the second card in the deck. And the High Priestess, part of this figure's magic and empowerment, is that they are inner wisdom. They're fully connected. They know that life is about more than just our little lives, right? They see this like great big web of life connected to beyond, connected to what else there is. So in the Two of Swords, sometimes our thinking can become very small. We're not connected to our inner wisdom, which is a part of our intuition. It's like a really important part of our human magic, the human experience. So we want to reconnect with that. And so I get the sense, again, if you're feeling like indecisive, first, Four of Cups, Four of Swords, rest, meditation, reflection. And of course, rest is, make sure if you just need a day to like lay in the backyard and read like a fantasy book, lay in the backyard and read a fantasy book. Rest isn't always like also self-work. Rest can just also be rest. So we want to do that. You want that rest, you want that reflection. So you even have the energy for a bit of like meditation, tapping, whatever you want to do, journaling. And then once you feel more connected with your inner wisdom, so that's that new moon gift for you. If the new moon is bringing in new cycles, if you want to plant new seeds, it looks like your new seeds to plant are more seeds of trusting yourself, your inner wisdom, and fulfillment. Because when you are more aligned with those energies, then the Two of Swords, you will not feel as indecisive. You'll feel more empowered in your decision making. And really, like, there is a very powerful energy behind being decisive. When you're just like, this is it, I'm doing this, this is happening, pieces move, you know? When we kind of like waffle, sometimes the pieces don't move. Or they move in scattered ways. So rest, reflection, reconnecting with yourself and your fulfillment, and then having an easier time making decisions. At the full moon, you're going to be releasing a lot of anxiety, a lot of illusions, and getting a lot of mental clarity. Now, I recognize I'm not saying you'll just never be anxious again, but the cards coming up for you are the Eight of Swords, which is a classic card of overthinking, overanalyzing, nitpicking, critiquing, very problem-based thinking. And we've got the Seven of Cups, which is a bit in La La Land. And then we have the Ace of Swords, which is now we've like cut through the illusions, we've cut through the fog. So that means that at this full moon, what you're really coming up to, you might feel a little anxious around this full moon. So if that happens, just lots of peace, lots of compassion, right? If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. Just like lean into it. So many times when we feel uncomfortable and we try to like fix it, we kind of just prolong it. So Eight of Swords is really asking you to notice, actually, what I really pick up from this card right now, we have a tendency to like nitpick or be overly critical sometimes of our plans or what we want to do. So if you're like, I really want to learn how to make candles, I don't know. Like this card would show up, you're like, oh, well, no one will buy them. Or like, oh, I'll never be able to afford it. Or they won't be good. It'll take too long to learn, blah, blah, blah. And so if you're feeling like a lack of fulfillment with this new moon and indecisive, I would check in, because at the full moon, a lot of those thoughts that are keeping you stuck are really asking to be faced and then like released. Because yeah, sure, maybe no one will buy your candles, but maybe everyone will love your candles. Another thing too, I think in the Eight of Swords, one of the reasons you feel so stuck is needing to figure all of the steps out ahead of time. And that does not happen. You have to go down the path, and then other paths starts to pop up and occur. So movement's really important here. So it's not saying not to validate your feelings. Of course, always validate your feelings. But really, like, the scales are skewed in the Eight of Swords because you're not really thinking about solutions or possibilities or getting creative, you know? Like, even if there is a challenge with your dream or your goal or whatever, how can you creatively navigate it? So in the Eight of Swords, you're really going to be with that full moon where we're moving up to. So the overthinking, the overanalyzing, the overcritiquing, that's what's going to be really flushed if you let it be flushed. And then the Seven of Cups is really asking you, Seven of Cups is asking you to really look at your options, get real with like, what are sort of like escapist fantasies and what are paths that you're really actually serious about moving ahead on, and then actually start to take some steps. So the Seven of Cups can roll up in a number of ways. So it can roll up where you're just like, okay, I could go back to school to be a massage therapist, or maybe I'm going to go back to school to study like literature, or maybe I'm going to move to Bali for a year, or maybe I'll just keep doing this. Or if you're just like, okay, today I've got to like call the bank and I've got to take my kid to school, but then I also want to make sure I got time to meditate. And then when you have so many things to do, sometimes you just do like almost none or the bare minimum. So that Seven of Cups is like, okay, check in with all the things that you're dreaming of doing. Obviously, the things you have to do, like remember to pick your kid up from soccer practice or whatever. But all those things that you feel like you have to do or you could do, this is where we start to assess and analyze. Like there's stuff you just have to do in life. C'est la vie. Sort that out. What you gotta do. Next, if you have all these dreams and plans and schemes for the future, sometimes some of this analysis paralysis with these two cards together comes from thinking that there's but one path and you've got to choose the right one. And the Seven of Cups is like, really, at this point, the worst decision is no decision. So because of that Two of Swords, that indecision with the new moon, I really get the sense that whatever's blocking you from making a decision, your inner wisdom or, too much overthinking, this is really what this lunar cycle wants you to face and see, and then make space for solution-based thinking too, and hope and possibility. So the Seven Cups is basically like, do you really think you're going to move to Bali? And if so, look into it now. If you don't, if that's just like, oh, it'd be nice to be in Bali, but what I really want to do is start my blog, then they're like, so start your blog. Like there's just, it'll never be perfect and you'll never be fully ready. Do some research, obviously, but then take action. Take action. And then when you do that, so when you face what's the illusion, what's the escapist fantasy, what are the things I really want to do? And where am I being overly critical of all my plans or trying to micromanage the future? When you let yourself sit with that, then you get the Ace of Swords. And the Ace of Swords is so great because the Ace of Swords is so much clarity. I also find the Ace of Swords for me, it can be very successful. I'm not saying you're going to be like a smash hit this full moon, but I'm not saying you're not. But it is this sense of, with so much of this reading has been about a lack of clarity. So with the full moon, you're really going to be prepared to wash away the things that don't bring you clarity. And then when you have that clarity that's going to be brewing up around the full moon, not only do you have clarity about like what you're going to do, but you have clarity for the next few steps. And when we know the next few steps of our path, we can feel so much more grounded and at peace. So much of this is about clarity. And then in the waning moon for the next new moon, oh, like it's just so much like creativity and moving after what you're like excited about and passionate about. Also like relationships. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so notice if like you feel like this, all of this stuff with relationships, or if you're feeling unfulfilled in relationships or stuck or not sure what to do. Yeah, by the waning moon of this lunar cycle, so like end of June-ish, we shall see. We shall see. So we've got something you're going to be releasing is that Seven of Pentacles. So Seven of Pentacles is where you're kind of just like, the plants are growing, the roots are growing underneath the garden, to use garden metaphors forever. But you maybe haven't seen a lot of growth. There's some growth, but more growth is coming. And it's basically just like, now you're just assessing where you're at. And like, hey, well, the growth is happening. It's slow. This is just how some things go. So I'm going to see like, going back to the garden metaphor, do I need to like prune a certain area? Is there a plant that is not doing well in a part of my garden that needs to be moved, etc.? What is doing well in my garden? So it's really about like, you just have to be patient sometimes. My favorite thing to say with this card is you cannot yell at your garden to make it grow faster, right? You got to water it, take care of it, be practical, make sure there's soil and compost, etc. But you can't force it. But I think because this is what you're releasing, I think there's actually going to be more momentum happening for you mid-end of June, more closer to the end of June, because you're going to be releasing that having to be like patient and assessing and now what and planning, and the energy you're going to be moving into for the next new moon. And we'll touch base about this again. I'll do another new moon reading to see where we're at, is the Page of Wands. And look at our meow meow. We've got like a magic wand. And then also the Knight of Cups. Oh, romance. So the Page of Wands is like excitement. And especially look at these, the difference between these two energies. So that Seven of Pentacles is very like grounded, patience, assessment, what's working, what's not working. These two cards are both a lot of movement. So Knights are always about like progress and where we're going and we're moving and there's action. Sometimes it's a little like immature. I like the Knights can kind of be like our teenage or like early 20 ages, but sometimes you kind of need that. You need that kind of optimistic, youthful bravado to just like go forth. So go for it, right? So I just see this as a real connection. We've really shifted from a lot of swords to this kind of energy of wands, but also the Knight of Cups, like romance, creativity, excitement. So long story short, you're getting rid of the things that make you feel really stuck. Well, you're going to have to first acknowledge them and then have an opportunity to kind of like make space, like kind of just be like, okay, yeah, sure, I could continue to only focus on the problems, but like, where's that getting me? I'm going to bring in more solutions. I'm making room for solutions. And then you're going to have more clarity. And then there's going to be movement towards what you love. So more about passion, more about creativity, more about plans that really light you up. I kind of get the sense you're remembering that, like, to remember life can be, we can taste life and savor it and love it. We can have some more fun. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was super helpful. Stay tuned for more. Have the best day.